The envelope was a final proof I needed that I was not my father's son. It arrived on a Tuesday, thick and creamy, the kind of paper that feels expensive. My name, David Miller, was typed with formality that felt like a slap. Inside was a single sheet and a check. The letter was from my father's lawyer. It stated in cold, precise legal terms that my father, Richard Miller, was exercising a clause in the trust fund established by my grandfather. He was dissolving my portion. The funds, which had been mine since my 25th birthday, were being recalled and reallocated. The check was for $100. A token of consideration, the letter said. The reason cited was gross familial insubordination and abandonment of traditional values. I wasn't surprised. Not really. My younger brother, James, had always been the heir apparent. Where I questioned, James obeyed. Where I built my own life away from the family compound in Connecticut, James stayed, a permanent fixture in my father's shadow, learning the family business, marrying the suitable girl, living in the guest house. My crime was my independence. My sin was moving to Oregon, becoming a landscape architect instead of a real estate tycoon, falling in love with a woman who was an artist, not a socialite. I had built a beautiful, quiet life with Elena. We had a small, modern house overlooking the sea, a life filled with work we loved and peace we had earned. To my father, this was not success. It was betrayal. The phone call came an hour after the letter. It was James. His voice was strained, an odd mix of apology and justification. David, look, Dad's, he's really hurt. You didn't come for his birthday. You missed the board meeting last month. He sees it as a rejection. The trust was from Grandfather. I said, my voice flat. It wasn't his to take. He's a trustee. He has the discretion. He says you've made it clear you don't want to be part of this family's legacy. So he's giving it to someone who does. To you. A pause. It's not like that. It's for the family's stability. For the future. I didn't argue. Arguing with James was like shouting into a well. You only heard your own echo. Okay, James, take care of the family's stability. I hung up. Elena wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. We knew this was a possibility, she whispered. Knowing and holding the proof are different things. I said, staring at the check, $100. The price of my father's esteem. That was 5 years ago. I never contacted him. I never begged. The money wasn't the issue. We were doing fine, more than fine, on our own. It was the symbolism, the official legal severance. He had, in every way that mattered to him, disowned me. James became the sole focus, the repository of all expectation and wealth. I heard through the sterile channel of my aunt that the will had been rewritten. Everything, the Connecticut estate, the Palm Beach property, the investments, the controlling shares in the company, was going to James. The reasoning was the same. James had committed to the family. James would care for them in their old age. James was reliable. And I was not. I was the outcast, the one who would be fine on my own. The funny thing was we were. Our business grew. Our love deepened. We traveled. We built a garden that was featured in magazines. We had a life so full of genuine warmth that the cold absence from Connecticut became a distant, barely felt chill. Until it wasn't. The first sign was an email. Not from my father, of course. From my mother. It was titled Thinking of You. The body was 3 lines. David, I hope you and Elena are well. Your father isn't as strong as he used to be. The house feels very large sometimes. I read it 3 times. It was a masterpiece of guilt-soaked ambiguity. No direct ask, just a trail of breadcrumbs meant to lead me to a sense of obligation. I didn't reply. A week later, another, James is so busy with a new expansion in Boston. He's hardly ever home. We miss seeing you. The expansion, funded, no doubt, by what was once partially mine. I deleted it. Then the call. My father's number flashed on my screen, a digit sequence I hadn't seen in years. My heart did a hard, unpleasant thump. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was older, thinner, but the imperious tone was still there, buried under a layer of false warmth. David, your mother tells me you're not responding to her emails. We need to talk. It's important. Call me back. I didn't. Elena watched me, her eyes soft with concern. You don't have to, she said. I know, I said, but the hook was in a tiny, persistent barb. The part of me that was still a little boy wanting his father's approval was curious. What could be so important that he would break his 5-year silence? It was my mother who finally broke through. She called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking it was a client. David. Her voice was a wisp. Mother. Oh, David, please don't hang up. She sounded genuinely distressed. It's about James. A cold trickle of something, not concern for James, but a dreadful anticipation, went down my spine. What about him? He's left. The business. Everything. He and Clara, they've moved to Zurich. For her career. He's taken a position there. I waited, and he said the pressures here were too much. The expectations. Your father, he's taken it very hard. I almost laughed. The golden child, buckling under the very weight he had so eagerly taken from my shoulders. That's unfortunate. I said, my voice neutral. David, please. Her composure cracked. Your father isn't well. Not just this. His heart. The doctors say he needs stress-free care. A quieter life. James was supposed to. He promised to take over everything. Now there's no one. The board is getting restless. The debts. Ah, there it was. The debts. The crumbling empire. The failed succession plan. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was, in a distant way, sorry for the tragedy of their own making. We need help, she blurted out. We need you to come home, just for a little while, to talk, to figure things out. The word home was a foreign object. That house had never been my home. Why me? I asked, echoing the question from a lifetime ago. You have James. You have everything tied up neatly with James. She cried then, soft, desperate sounds. He's gone, David. He's not answering our calls properly. He says he has his own life now. We misjudged. We need you. The admission hung in the digital space between us. Not an apology. An admission of tactical error. They hadn't realized I was a person. They'd realized their primary asset was now non-performing. I hope you find a solution, I said, my voice calm, final. But it won't involve me. I ended the call. My hand was steady. Elena brought me a cup of tea, her silence more supportive than any words. It's starting, she said quietly. I nodded. Let's start. I'm not going anywhere. I thought my clarity would be the end of it. I underestimated the sheer, stubborn force of my father's will. The voicemails began in earnest. My mother's, pleading, increasingly dramatic. My father's, moving through stages, commanding, condescending, then finally, sputtering with an anger that bordered on incoherence. After all we've given you, the opportunities. This is your family legacy, he shouted in one message. What opportunities? The opportunity to be sidelined? The legacy of being written out? Then came the in-person assault. I was returning from a nursery, my hands dirty from repotting a Japanese maple, when I saw the rented luxury sedan in my driveway. They were standing on my porch, looking utterly out of place against our weathered cedar and seagrass welcome mat. My father looked shrunken, his tailored suit hanging loosely. My mother looked decades older than her years, her face pinched. I didn't hurry. I finished parking, gathered my bags, and walked toward them. "David," my mother said, forcing a smile. "This is a surprise," I said, not unlocking the door. "We need to talk," my father said, his voice attempting its old boom but landing as a rasp. "We are talking." "Inside," he commanded, gesturing to the door. "I prefer it out here. The view is better." I leaned against the railing, looking past them to the vast, gray Pacific. My father's face flushed. "Your brother has abandoned his responsibilities. He's left the company in a precarious position. There are liabilities, personal guarantees I made, believing he would be there. That was poor judgment," I observed. He flinched. "I am still your father." "Are you?" I asked, meeting his eyes for the first time. A father doesn't disinherit one son for living his life. A father doesn't show up years later, not to mend fences, but to demand the other son clean up a financial mess. You're not here for a son. You're here for a bailout. My mother wrung her hands. "David, that's not true. We want to reconnect. We've missed you. You've had 5 years. You had my address. You never missed me until your plan fell apart. You don't miss me. You miss having a compliant asset. You are ungrateful," my father spat. "You live in this shack, playing the dirt, while your family's empire is crumbling." I smiled then, a real smile. I love my shack. I love the dirt. And it's not my family's empire. You made sure of that. It's James's problem. Or rather, it was. Now it's yours. The conversation spiraled from there, offers veiled and then explicit. If I came back, took over the management of things, proved myself, perhaps the will could be reconsidered. A place at the table. A share of what was left. It was grotesque. A bribe, using the remnants of what they'd stolen from me as currency. "I have a life," I said, cutting through the noise. "A business. A wife. A home. I'm not interested in salvaging the wreckage of your poor decisions. You put all your faith, all your money, all your future in James. You told me explicitly I was not part of that future. I believed you. I accepted it. Now you live with it." My father's arrogance finally shattered. The mask fell, revealing raw, terrified need. We could lose everything. The house. Everything. I felt a pang then, not for him, but for the profound sadness of it all. Then you should have planned better. You should have loved more broadly. You should not have bet everything on a single, fallible human being just because he told you what you wanted to hear. I unlocked my door. "Don't come back here. There is nothing for you." I went inside and closed the door on their stunned, crumbling faces. Through the window, I watched them stand there for a long time, 2 statues of regret, before they slowly drove away. The peace that followed was profound but brittle. I knew it wouldn't last. They had sniffed desperation, and desperate people are relentless. I blocked their numbers again, but they found other ways. Letters now. Long, rambling missives from my mother on expensive stationery, detailing my father's decline, the creditors circling, the humiliation. Emails from an account I didn't recognize, full of legalistic threats from my father about filial duty and moral obligation, concepts he never once applied to himself in relation to me. Then James called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. On the 4th attempt, I answered, my silence a heavy weight on the line. "David." He sounded tired. "You're a hard man to reach." "I'm a busy man." A pause. "Listen, I know things haven't been ideal. Between us, with Mom and Dad." Ideal, I repeated, letting the irony hang. They're in trouble. Real trouble. The house, there's a second mortgage. The business, it was over-leveraged. I didn't know the full extent until I was trying to untangle it. It's a mess. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, tone flat. They're talking about selling the Palm Beach property for a fraction of what it's worth, just to stay afloat. Dad's health is getting worse with the stress. I said nothing. The ocean outside my window was churning, reflecting the gray sky. They need help, James pushed. Not necessarily money, but guidance. Someone on the ground. Someone they trust. That was the final straw. Trust. I let out a short, humorless laugh. James, they don't trust me. They never did. They're looking for a crisis manager. A patsy. And you're calling me because you don't want the job. You ran to Zurich to escape it. Don't try to offload your guilt onto me. His voice hardened. There are parents. They were your parents. I corrected. I was the backup organism. The spare part they never expected to need. Well, you were the chosen part. You took the inheritance. You took the mantle. You made the promises. This is your responsibility. You don't get to renegotiate the contract now that you've read the fine print. You're heartless, he whispered, but it lacked conviction. No, I said, I'm free. You should try it sometime. But you won't. You're still hoping for a piece of whatever's left, even from across the ocean. Good luck with that. I hung up. The call left a bitter taste, but no doubt. The lines were drawn. The siege, however, was not over. A month later, they came again. This time, they looked truly broken. The rental car was a cheaper model. Their clothes were rumpled. My father leaned on a cane. They didn't knock with authority. They tapped weakly. I opened the door, not inviting them in. The wind whipped off the sea, making them shiver. We have nowhere else to go, my mother said, her voice raw. The bank, they've started proceedings. James sent some money, but it's a drop in the bucket. He says it's all he can do. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at my deck, at the pots of thriving succulents. We were wrong, he muttered, the words clearly physically painful. About you, about James, about everything. I waited. We need a place to stay, my mother begged, just for a little while we sort things out. You have the space, the guest room. I looked at them, these two architects of their own ruin. I felt pity, a deep, weary ocean of it. But pity is not love, and it is not obligation. No, I said, gently but with absolute finality. My father's head snapped up. We're your parents. You revoked that title years ago. I said, you revoked it with a lawyer's letter and $100 check. You can't reinstantiate it now that it's convenient. You made your family with James. He is your family. Depend on him. The words hung in the salt air. Depend on him. The core of their entire lives, now a cruel punchline. My mother sobbed openly. My father's face went ashen. They saw it then, truly saw it. The door was not just closed. It was walled up. I was not their son. I was a stranger who remembered them. Please. My father said, the word alien on his lips. The local inn is on a coastal road. I said, I book quickly, it gets busy. I then closed the door, not with a slam, but with a soft, definitive click. I did not watch them leave. I went to my studio, where Elena was sketching, and put my hand on her shoulder. She covered it with hers. No words were needed. We were our own family, complete and sufficient. The decision had been brewing for months. A quiet seed planted the day the first envelope arrived. Their final visit was the water it needed to sprout. Oregon, with its wild beauty, was tainted. Every stunning vista now had the ghosts of my parents' desperate faces superimposed upon it. Our home felt like a fortress under siege. Even though the attackers had been defeated, the peace was the peace of a battlefield after the war. The scars were still there in the earth. Elena and I talked long into the nights. We had built something wonderful here, but we were not bound to the land. We were bound to each other. An opportunity had arisen, one we had casually discussed for years, a partnership with a renowned ecological design firm in New Zealand. They'd seen our work, been impressed, and the offer was serious. Relocation, a new challenge, a literal other side of the world. It felt like a sign, not an escape, but an evolution, a conscious choice to move toward something, not just away from someone. We decided quickly. The clarity was exhilarating. We would go. Telling our friends was bittersweet, but filled with excitement for our new adventure. Telling my remaining family, a few cousins, and Anne who had always been kind but distant, was a formality. I sent a brief, cheerful email. Elena and I are embarking on a new chapter. We've accepted positions in New Zealand and will be relocating in a few months. Our Oregon home will be on the market soon. Stay in touch. The responses were as expected. Surprise, congratulations, a few, but that's so far. I didn't engage. I was already mentally packing, already feeling the weight lift. Selling the house was surprisingly easy. The market was strong. Our agent, a no-nonsense woman who loved the property, assured us it would sell quickly. We began the purge. We weren't just packing. We were shedding. Furniture that held memories of waiting for a phone call that never came. Sold. Gifts from my parents that had been gathering dust in closet. Donated. We kept only what brought us joy, what served our future. It was a cathartic, physical manifestation of the emotional unburdening I'd been undergoing for years. We were in the thick of it, the house half empty and echoing with promise, when the final knock came. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The frequency had diminished, but their desperation had a radar all its own. I opened the door. They stood there, looking like refugees. My father seemed to have aged another decade. My mother's eyes were hollow. "You're leaving?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. She'd heard, then, from a cousin, perhaps. "Yes, New Zealand. In a month." "You can't," my father said, but it was a plea, not a command. "We can. We are. What about?" He gestured weakly, unable to even finish the sentence. "What about us? What about the mess? What about your duty?" I looked at them. These two people who had given me life and then spent a lifetime making me feel like I owed them for it. I felt a profound, calm detachment. "Your situation is unfortunate," I said, "but it is not my situation. You tied your fate to James. He is your recourse. He is your son. I am not." "We were wrong," my mother cried, the words tearing from her. "We see it now. Please, David, don't do this. Don't leave us like this." I tilted my head. "You left me first. You left me in every way that mattered. You don't get to call me back now that you're lonely. This isn't about family. This is about logistics. And I am no longer a logistical option for you." My father sank then, his shoulders collapsing. The proud patriarch was gone, leaving a scared, sick old man. "We have nothing," he whispered, a confession to the ground. I felt no triumph, only a deep, abiding sense of the tragedy of their choices. "I'm sorry," I said, and for the first time, I meant it with a pure, untainted sorrow. "But you made your bed a long time ago. James was the one you chose to lie in it with. I hope, for your sake, he finds a way to make it comfortable." I closed the door. This time, I did watch from the window. They didn't move for a long time. Two lost figures on my porch, dwarfed by the vast, indifferent sea. Finally, they turned and walked slowly to their car, a pair of ghosts fading in the afternoon light. The last weeks in Oregon passed in a blur of logistics and goodbyes. The house sold to a young family who gushed about the light and the garden. We took that as a good omen. Our possessions were whittled down to a shipping container's worth. The rest was gone, and with it, the last tangible anchors to a past I no longer claimed. The flight to New Zealand was long, but it felt like a bridge being burned mile by mile. When we landed, the air was different, the light was sharper, and the future was a blank, beautiful page. We settled into a temporary rental in Christchurch, a modern apartment with a view of the Port Hills. The new job was challenging and exhilarating. We were designing restorative landscapes, healing pieces of land, which felt poetically apartment. We were healing our own landscape, too. Months passed in a happy, busy haze. We bought a small piece of land ourselves on the Banks Peninsula with a rugged view of a bay. We began plans to build our own house, a true forever home, designed by us, for us. The past felt like a poorly written book I'd finally put down. Then, one evening, as I was reviewing blueprints, an email popped up. The subject line was simply Dad. It was from James. I stared at it for a full minute. Elena came over, reading over my shoulder. She squeezed my shoulder. You don't have to. I opened it. It was long, rambling and thick with self-pity I recognized. The situation had reached its inevitable, ugly conclusion. My parents had lost the Connecticut house. The bankruptcy proceedings were public and humiliating. They had, in a last pathetic gambit, shown up on James's doorstep in Zurich. They had sold everything they had left for plane tickets, arriving with 2 suitcases and the expectation that their golden boy would provide. But James's wife, Clara, was 7 months pregnant. Their apartment was small. His new job was demanding. The pressure he'd fled from in the States had followed him in the form of 2 aging, destitute parents. They're here, David, he wrote. They're sleeping on our sofa. Clara is furious. Her family thinks I'm a failure. They're talking about a home, a care home, but they have no money. The social system's here. It's complicated. I don't know what to do. I can't handle this. They're your parents, too. I read it twice. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of that last sentence. They're your parents, too. Only when every other option had evaporated, when the reality was a sofa in a foreign living room, did this truth suddenly become operational. I didn't feel anger. I felt a quiet, clean certainty. I typed my reply, my fingers steady on the keys. James, you were their only plan. You were their sole heir, their chosen successor, the repository of every hope and dollar. You accepted that role. You benefited from it exclusively. The responsibility for the consequences of that choice is yours alone. They are not my parents. They relinquished that claim legally and emotionally years ago. I have built a life without them, as they instructed me to do. You built a life with them, as you agreed to do. You wanted to be the only son. Congratulations. You are. Do not contact me again. David. I hit send. Then methodically I blocked his email address. I looked up at Elena. It's done, I said. She nodded. For good. For good. We went outside, onto our small balcony. The night sky in the southern hemisphere was brilliantly clear, unfamiliar constellations glittering coldly. The air was cool and clean. I put my arm around my wife, pulling her close. Behind us, in the apartment, were the blueprints for our new house, our shared future. Ahead of us was a vast, open horizon. There was no bitterness in my heart, only space. The space they had forced me to create for myself had become my greatest possession. They had given me nothing in their will, but in their rejection, they had given me everything. The unshakable knowledge of my own strength, the value of the family I built, and the freedom to live a life entirely on my own terms, far away from the ruins of their making. I was finally and absolutely free.